Yeah, sure, of course.
Okay. Yeah, you too. Okay,
Uh,
next we have a presentation from Jackie Schwartz and I think one of her colleagues on plans for redeveloping the Bergamont Station property there. And if you don't mind, Jackie, maybe you could introduce yourself real quick
Yeah,
and
of course.
who's ever with you and take it away.
Okay. Thanks everyone for having me. My name is Jackie Swartz. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Mobility Division in Santa Monica. And I'll be talking about the upcoming construction within the Bergamot area along 3 specific corridors. I'll let Kyle introduce himself before I get started.
Hi, everyone. Kyle Kozar, Principal Transportation Planner in the Mobility Division as well.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen. And then get started. Okay. All right, so as I mentioned, today I'm going to be talking about the upcoming construction of 3 key projects in the Bergamot area. These projects, which are identified as first last mile improvements, help improve connections and access to and from the Metro E line and close some important gaps in the network to eliminate barriers for people walking and biking. So I'm going to provide a little background on how we got here, and then I'll get into the design elements of each of the 3 key projects and talk about what you can expect to see once the project is completed, and then I'll close it out with the construction schedule and what that will look like. So starting off with the project background, we have several adopted plans and documents that guide our work. These are just these are examples of them, the covers. I'm not going to go into everyone in detail, but basically each plan that you see here went through an exhaustive community engagement process, and each plan has a list of specific projects to provide a variety of transportation options. The Bergamot area first last mile project is identified in all of these plans, and in 2020 council adopted an ambitious 5-year vision to upgrade several bike facilities to protected facilities, and 2 of those we'll be going over today. So I'm zooming in a little bit here to some maps that highlight what the extent of these projects and what it means in some of these plans. So the map on the left is a snapshot of the protected bike network, the 5-year vision. So all the segments in orange are part of that 5-year vision. I've circled the Bergamot area, so this dashed line represents the area we're talking about today. And you can see Stewart Street from Colorado up to Kansas. It's about 1 mile long. And then on 26th Street, about 0.3 miles from Broadway over to Olympic Boulevard. And then on the right side, this is a snapshot of our Vision Zero priority network. So now called the Local Roadway Safety Plan, which is our goal to eliminate traffic fatalities and severe injuries in our city. So these are streets where we see a higher number of fatal and severe crashes compared to other streets in the city. And I have a circle here in the same area where we're talking about today. Olympic Boulevard, and then some of the red points here represent the priority intersections where we see a lot of high numbers of fatal and severe crashes, and then a little bit of 26th Street leading up to Broadway. So I showed you in the previous slides, where we start with our high-level plans to talk about these projects, and then as we take it to the next level, usually it's based on grant funding. So when we received grant funding for these projects, we got started on planning and engaging the community, holding workshops, holding open house events, presentations, door knocking, mailers, collecting data, observations, all the elements that we need to then create some concepts to talk through the community with, understand what some of the challenges are, some of those barriers, that eventually leads us to a final plan. And so it's been a while since we finalized the plan, and then we come back to the community and say, hey, remember we talked about this. Here's the next phase of it, which is the construction. And so some of these dates here also represent what we've been doing since final design and approval, going back again to the community at, booth activities or presentations like this. And then we'll be sending out mailers in the next month or so, and we will be updating more of the information on our project website. So let's see, now I can start to kind of get into the design a little bit. Before I get into that, I want to highlight specifically what those corridors look like, a little closer view. So starting with Olympic Boulevard, this line here in orange, we're going to be upgrading the sidewalk where there's not one today. So the sidewalk on the north side of Olympic from 26th to Stewart, adding some trees and lighting as well. And then the next one is 26th Street, this green line here, where we're upgrading the existing bike lane to a protected facility, adding a new crosswalk to get to Bergamot, and then some improvements here at Broadway where we're connecting to another bike facility. And then the big one here is Stewart Street, which is kind of a funky shape project, but the main corridor is Stewart Street, where we're upgrading the bike lane and adding other design elements, and then Pennsylvania Avenue, where we're again adding new sidewalk where we don't have any today, and trees and lighting. Okay, so I want to kind of highlight what some of these problems are and how we address them through our design work and projects, so that people can get a better understanding through some photos of what we encounter, what bicyclists, pedestrians may encounter in this area, so we can help explain why we do some of these things. So, starting with the photo up top at Broadway and 19th, this is consistent problem where we have people parking in the bike lanes, getting access or entry points into it, and then forcing the bicyclists to navigate out into unsafe conditions or just unpredictable conditions. So we want to eliminate that as much as possible, where possible, and working closely with police to help us with that as well. We've used a lot of these plastic bollards down in the bottom left photo, you can see, but these get destroyed pretty quickly if people want to go over them. They just do. These were out, I think, about a week on Ocean Avenue before this truck just destroyed them. And so we have to respond to these calls consistently about these problems, and it's a big maintenance burden on us, in addition to then breaking down the protection. And then this photo here on the right, just showing a picture of the bicyclist navigating through traffic, queuing up at the light, and then eventually entering into the intersection where there's a lot more conflict points, but then also having to watch for the parked cars who are opening their doors and maybe not necessarily looking for a bicyclist. So it creates this high stress environment for them, and we want to eliminate that. A little bit here about some of the pedestrian and connectivity that we're working to improve. This shot here at Olympic and 26th, the top left, is where we're going to be adding a new crosswalk and upgrading the ramps, adding new ramps and upgrading the existing ramp to give another crossing opportunity for pedestrians. A lot of times we see people just sprinting across the intersection on this side. So adding the crosswalk will help improve the conditions for them. And then on the right, we've got Nebraska and Stewart, where we're going to be adding a curb extensions and some turn restrictions to improve the illegal maneuvers and poor visibility at this location. Also closing some gaps in the bike network down here at Colorado and Yale. This is coming off Stewart, going over to Colorado to connect to a facility on Yale, where there's a very short stretch for cars to make this left turn. this oncoming traffic here to get into the turn pocket and make their left turn. Meanwhile, the bicyclist is also trying to navigate here and make their left turn. And we have a pedestrian or a crosswalk as well. So we'll be making some improvements there that I'll go over. And then sidewalks. So I talked a little bit about the Olympic sidewalks, and then this one here is a photo of the conditions on Pennsylvania. So most of Pennsylvania doesn't have sidewalk. There's a section in front of the college that does, but we'll be upgrading all of this to create a nice white sidewalk with trees and lighting. So let me jump into the design for each one of these components. So Olympic Boulevard is pretty straightforward and simple. It's pretty low impact, I think, to the area during construction because most of the work is going to be on, not in street. I mean, there will be some closure probably, but the work is going to be repaving or implementing a sidewalk here, putting in about 32 new trees. We're taking out, I think, like 13 trees because they're either dying or we can't create a clear pedestrian pathway because the trees would be dead center in the sidewalk. So adding the 32 trees and then about 10 street lights will be installed along the way, along that stretch too. And then we're going to close this slip lane. What we mean by this slip lane is this little opening here for cars to be able to come and make a right turn really quickly. We have a lot of pedestrians crossing here to get to Expo, and so closing this off with concrete and shortening that crossing distance to help reduce the speeds for the turning vehicles and improve sight lines. And then at 26th from Olympic to Broadway, this project is pretty straightforward as well. The existing bike lane that's there today will be upgraded with concrete barriers, just like you see here. There really isn't any parking there. I think we have 4 parking spaces on there, so low impact there. We're removing one of those spaces towards Broadway, but it'll look similar to what you see in this photo, which is a photo from 17th Street. We're going to be modifying some of the signals to give the pedestrians a head start. We call this a leading pedestrian interval. Gets the pedestrians about 3 seconds to start crossing, and they can establish presence in the crosswalk, makes them more visible to motorists, and it really improves the yielding compliance. And then as we get to the end of the project at Broadway, where we're connecting to another upcoming protected facility, we're going to add a bike box like you see in this photo to help get the bicyclists and scooter users ahead of traffic as they start navigating through the intersection, while the drivers are waiting behind the stop bar like you see this car doing. And then we're going to restrict the right turn on red for one of the corners, the north east corner, to avoid the right hook crashes. Okay, so that was the Olympic sidewalk and then 26th Street. So now I'm going to jump into Stewart, Pennsylvania, which has a lot more elements. So, but similar, not too new from what I've already explained. So again, we're going to be upgrading Stewart Street with a concrete barrier like you see here. So we'll have, consistent treatment throughout these corridors, which really helps also with predictability and what drivers can expect as we roll these out. Adding LPIs, like I mentioned earlier. And then we're going to add 2 new bike signals for Stewart Street. One is going to be at Stewart in Colorado, and then another at Stewart in Olympic. So the bicyclists will have a dedicated signal to cross through the intersection without vehicle traffic moving. Here at Colorado Avenue in Yale, I mentioned earlier, there's a important connection for bicyclists as they make their turn from Stewart to Colorado and then connect up here to Yale. So what we're doing here is we're going to create a left turn pocket just for bicyclists and restrict the left turn for motorists. Today it's restricted during peak hours. We're going to restrict it full time. So motorists will go to the next block to make their turn. And then we're also going to be removing this crosswalk. I mentioned earlier, it's a very short storage space here for cars who are turning here and trying to get into the left, and then cars coming this way and trying to get into the left. So a lot of times what happens is cars making their turn will hang out in this travel lane halfway, And then these cars will also hang out in the travel lane this halfway. And so it makes a really congested short space where people like drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists have to make quick decisions that lead to a lot of crashes. So we saw a lot of high crashes here in this area. This is also a Vision Zero priority intersection. So we're going to be implementing these treatments to help reduce those conflicts. And then we have 2 bus boarding islands coming. So what that means is something that looks like this. This is on Ocean Avenue. We'll have 2. So it's a concrete pad where the bus pulls up in lane with traffic. So it stops, traffic stops behind them. They board, and the pedestrians wait here or at the sidewalk. And then there will be a ramp for them to cross the bike lane, just like you see here, and then access the sidewalk. So there's going to be one at the current bus stops on Stewart today, where it's one heading northbound towards Colorado, and then the other direction southbound, right in front of the college. And then we're adding a curb extension. So this painted bulb out here, we do these treatments sometimes to tee up the area for future infrastructure, like concrete. So here, I don't know how long this has been in place, but it's this project will come in and install concrete bulb out where you see this striping and create a wider sidewalk, much bigger refuge, and shorten that crossing distance. This is a really wide intersection, so that will bring a lot of improvements. And then also we're going to restrict a left turn out of here. This maneuver is also dangerous crossing Stewart as people are coming off Olympic going through here, and then people coming from Stewart also trying to make the left. So we're going to restrict that to just a right turn only. And then here at the end of the project, where we get to Kansas, we're raising the bike facility out of the street and bringing it up to sidewalk level. So you can see the existing conditions here on the left. And then on the right, you can see where we have the green painted bike facility. It's a sidewalk level. One side is going to be the pedestrian pathway, and the other side is the raised facility just in the southbound direction, while the other side maintains the bike lane in the street. So it's showing green here just to make it clear, but in reality, the pavement will be just slightly different color than what the sidewalk pavement coloring is, and then we'll have signage to indicate to bicyclists and pedestrians where they should be in this space. Okay, moving on to Pennsylvania now. So we're treating Stewart and Pennsylvania as one project. We call it Stewart Penn Safety Enhancements. But talking about Pennsylvania specifically, we're going to be installing 20 new trees here and 19 new street lights. That includes pedestrian lighting from 26 to Stewart. You can see in this photo, there's not, you can kind of see in this photo, there's not any crosswalk or any sidewalk here on both sides. I think the sidewalk starts more around here where the parking lot is. And so we're going to construct new sidewalk to eliminate people being forced in the street to walk, and just make better connections again to jobs and transit and expo bike path and so on and so forth. So I want to talk a little bit about what some of those trade-offs are too when we implement projects like this and upgrade the street, bring things up to standard. This is a image of the parking inventory and the impacts that are going to be that will change. So I have overall there's about a 20% parking loss in this area after the project gets implemented. The biggest change really is on Pennsylvania Avenue, where we're removing 15 spaces in order to install the new sidewalks there, because there isn't any today. But I wanted to make sure and capture specifically where some of these parking changes will be, so that everyone is aware and clear about where they'll see change in terms of parking. And then loading and access, as we design these projects and observe and talk to the community, we also are mindful of what are the loading needs and access needs. I think the use of the curb has changed a lot since COVID with just many more deliveries. And so we're very mindful of where those illegal activities are happening now so that we can get ahead of it and adjust that with these designs. So we already have some loading spaces on Stewart, which are going to remain over by Colorado. And then ADA needs today, we don't have any blue zones within these project areas. And so whenever there is, we always either notify the resident and ask them, the residents in the block, and ask, is there still a need? Some of these are just really old and they're no longer in use. So we always do notifications, or we also have a process in place where if a resident is in need of a blue zone, they can contact the city and request one, apply for one, and then our traffic engineers assess the locations and identify the best location near the location that's being requested, that's close to an ADA ramp that people can access. And then finally, throughout every project, we work with our fire department to make sure that they're aware of these projects and understand if they have any impacts, that we can make adjustments. We'll go out and do field tests in areas that seem that they could be very close, even though we run through our own analysis in the design process even before implementing it. We also double down by checking those turning movements in the field. So this is a photo of us working on that at 17th Street. Okay, so let me talk about the construction schedule. It's a big area to start construction. We're not doing it all at once. We're phasing these out, but there is going to be some overlap. So Olympic Boulevard sidewalk improvements will start around May and wrap up around spring 2025. And then shortly after the start of Olympic, 26th Street Protected Bikeway will start. That'll be in the fall 2024 and go through late 2025, early 2026. And then we have Stewart Penn, which starts a little bit sooner than 26th Street, but it's going to take longer because it's a bigger project, probably about 18 months. So we'll end construction around summer 2026 on that project. Of course, this is subject to change depending on what the needs are and what else is happening in the city. But we received the funds for this construction and are going to be awarding the project next month to a contractor. So we'll have a clear schedule at that point. And then I want to close out, by saying thank you. The reason we're, the goal of these projects is to design streets for people to make it easier for people to bike, easier to walk, easier to take the bus and transit, so that as we grow, as the city changes, new development comes in, we can thrive and children and families can feel safe walking and biking. That is the goal, to give people more options to get around in our city. So you can scan this QR code to link to our website and get more information about timelines and other upcoming presentations and events that we'll be at. If you want to come out and support or ask questions, we'll be there. I'm also available via email and can be contacted anytime. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. So we're gonna open it up for questions. There were a few in the chat, and Kyle, did you want to add?
I was just going to say we can start going through some of these, and then if people have others, we can respond to those too. Jackie, can you go back to that image of Colorado and Yale and just walk people through with that image up, how a cyclist would make that turn from riding on Stewart northbound to Yale?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Wait, where is it?
Back. There. Oh, forward. Back.
Oh, here we go.
So-
Okay, maybe I'll do street view.
Yeah, well, and so what I can say is just to respond, Sam, to your question. So see, there is a signal there at Stewart, uh, but then there's not a signal at Yale. And so the other part of the confusion is that there's a mid-block crossing that isn't at Yale that isn't currently very well displayed too. And so, but it's not signalized. So if you're going northbound, as a cyclist, you're just going to ride through that you're just going to ride the same way. You're going to be riding northbound in the protected lane. You're going to turn right. And then as you get over, then you'll have, as a cyclist, a little turn pocket to make that left-hand turn, but it's unsignalized. So it's permissive. So you'll have a little turn pocket. It's different than this vehicle turn pocket. It's smaller. There'll be some bollards and things, and you'll kind of get in there, but you'll have to wait, and yield to oncoming traffic to navigate that turn. So it's a permissive left turn for cyclists. So that's
Yeah,
kind of
and
how you'll navigate it.
Middle.
yeah, and it's a short, quick, stretch that you have to get over. So what we're doing as part of the design, so the cyclists will come off this bike lane here, make their right turn. There's, concrete protection here that will help with the turning vehicles too. And then there's like a 6 or 7 foot bikeway here, along here, and that's going to be protected with bollards. And so as the cyclist comes over, they'll still have a safe space to wait before they transition to the turn pocket. So it won't be immediately like sharrowed and then you get to the turn pocket. If you want to stay in the protected zone, you'll have that space to do that and then get over and turn this way to go there. Or you just continue on straight. So the protection will end here and then it continues straight through if a bicyclist wants to navigate that way.
And so the next question, yeah, so the bike path will go under the I-10 underpass. I mean, I can't speak to how that is going to, the sidewalk space is not changing under the underpass at all. But the bike lane it goes under there currently, but it will go under there as well. So I can't speak to how that's going to, deter whatever homeless encampments are happening there. But
since you have that image up, would this mean that this parking would be eliminated?
No, this parking will remain. So only one side. This parking will remain, but only, I think we're removing 2 spots. So 2 at the start here to extend the red curb. And it'll just be a parking protected facility with barriers. So the bike lane will still run along the curbside. And then once it gets to like about here, this utility box is going away if it hasn't already. Then they'll ramp up.
Okay, it just looked like it was on the sidewalk once you get towards Kansas, on that side, on the west side there going south.
it's
going to be, starting here, it does go up on the sidewalk.
Okay, so on the underpass, it's not going to impact the sidewalk at all. That was I was just curious how that would work. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One quick question too, since we're in that sector, and this is probably there's no solution, but on Olympic going east, just passing the 26th Street intersection there, cars stop all the time, to drop people off at Bergamont Station. And, I can't believe when that was designed, they didn't have a pull-in. Like at the Bundy stop, there's a pull-in area where people can drop people, a drop-off area. Yeah, right there. And that's so cars, stop on, Olympic going, I guess that's going east. Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
and
the bus.
it drives me nuts. But there's no, I guess there's just not the land to have a proper kind of drop-off area for people being dropped off to jump on the train at Bergamot Station.
Right. Yeah. Ideally, there would have been like a cutout like you're describing,
Yeah.
or, when there's parking, we can convert some of them to loading because they're shadowed by other parking spaces, but Olympic just isn't designed for that.
And there's nowhere to use that space, that green belt in the middle of, the two sides of Olympic there. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, no, that's a good
and
idea. I mean, yeah, something to look at in the future. It's like carve out a loading and then a pathway for the pedestrians to get back to the crosswalk.
Okay, I see a couple of hands up. Chris.
Well, there's one more from Bernice, had a couple in the chat real quick.
Okay.
So on Pennsylvania, I'm not, in terms of like closing the gap between Stanford and 26th Street, or Stanford and the Watering Garden. I'm not really sure. So like the new sidewalk will be on the side of the street that doesn't currently have it on Pennsylvania. But as far as going north or going east, I'm sorry, to Stanford, that's private property, and I can't really speak to when that was redeveloped. No, over one over of Pennsylvania, Jackie.
What do you mean as private property? The street became private?
No, not the. So Pennsylvania here isn't, but as you see, it goes into this facility.
Yeah.
And that is private property that, it was redeveloped, and I can't speak to the decisions. I wasn't involved when
property, because that was not a private property. Those apartments, the village, they didn't go all the way.
Oh,
what happened?
Yeah, I unfortunately cannot speak to why there is not a road going through there. I have no idea.
There is a road behind the apartments, so they can use that as the connection. I don't know.
I'm saying through the parking lot there and through the building, like I don't know.
At the end of the building, there is a road. At the south end of the village trailer, those apartments, there's a driving area there. And so that could be can be used. That is not private property.
Sorry, tell me where you're talking about. Like this is Pennsylvania. When we get here,
Pennsylvania.
It ends
south of those apartments. That used to be public property. That used to be the street before, and so many years ago.
Like, are you saying there was a pass through here?
Yeah, we were told that we will have a walkway all the way to go to the water garden because we are sort of locked in here.
Got it. I see. I don't know the history on that development, but I can ask around and see what happened with that, or what the story is, and get back to you.
Yeah, I'll appreciate. Also, I'm sorry to take over. Now, you're going to have a meeting somewhere in the Colorado Center. How are you reaching out to people from this area, from the college streets? I have not received any mailing that there will be a meeting. If I was here, I would know.
Yep, we'll put it on our website. So right now it is posted on our website, but we'll also post it on social media, let people know to come out. And then we'll also be sending mailers about the upcoming construction to residents around the project areas, so they can receive something in the mail saying, come to these events, or go to our website to see what events are coming up.
I will appreciate, because over here we are not too social media oriented. So most of us who live around here are not young. So, we need to have some mailings.
Yeah, I can definitely make sure we do that.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, was that the last of the questions from the chat? If so, we can move on to Chris. Oh, okay. Then Maria, then Chris.
Real quick, so you mentioned that there was several parking that were being eliminated. Is the city talking about creating, whether it's at Bergamot or somewhere in the area, or tied to the light rail parking that, especially employees, because I think a lot of employees may use that parking. Because I know that's been an issue with employee parking and employees having to, compete for parking spaces with residents. So is the city looking at creating a more space for parking, especially the parking that will be lost? So that's one question. And then the other question is, because you mentioned that there was going to be several years of construction, are you anticipating any road closures or any potential backups that we should be aware of?
Sure. So for the parking, we're not aware of any parking that is over capacity, right? Like there's, from what we have observed and in talking to the community, of course, nobody wants to say, oh, we don't, we take away the parking, right? But what we look for in these cases is where there is consistent capacity issues along these blocks to then move parking, make room for other, move other things around so that we can create new spaces. We've not heard that to be the case in this area. Of course, I think once it gets down more towards the neighborhood, that could probably be the case, but we're not really impacting too much parking down here. We are flipping, I will mention this, I think it's between Delaware and Virginia. Parking right now is on the east side. We're going to flip it to the west side, but it's staying the same. So usually in the commercial zones, what we've seen in here in this area, it's not that constrained. We did have a lot of input from West Side Ballet about some of the parking impacts. So we had more impacts here in the early design phases. But after talking with them, we looked at other ways to save some of that parking, and then we're able to add some more parking on Nebraska by converting the perpendicular, the parallel parking to perpendicular. So that helped improve the situation that they were expressing as being too challenging for them. And so what we do as we implement these projects, we don't just walk away after. We observe and make sure that we stay connected with the community after implementation so that we understand where new problems or new potential problems have come up so we can fix them, refine them, and move things around as needed. Because you just don't know how new things will pop up until the changes are in. So we'll keep an eye on that too. Thanks for bringing it up. And then to answer your question about the construction, so we're not going to, this won't be like, I'm talking about Stewart, for example, the construction there. It's not like they're going to shut down the whole stretch. They'll do certain blocks at a time. And then once they're done with that block, they'll move on to the next. So it's low impact along the whole corridor overall. But it does take long, right? Because we try to minimize that impact. And then our public works team always maintains a travel lane in each direction. I don't think I've ever, if they have to shut it down, it would be like a very limited time and maybe at night to get something in. But they almost always try to maintain a travel lane in each direction to reduce the impact on the community. And those details will come out as soon as we get the contractor on board, and then they develop a specific schedule that we can share out.
And there'll be extra notices sent from the public works team that are specific with like dates of construction and things like that. So they typically send those to addresses, all the addresses within a certain radius of the construction 2 weeks in advance of construction starting. So everyone should get a notice, additional notice from them, about the construction start and kind of schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris.
Hello. Yes, a little bit, just past the 10 freeway tunnel. So it's only about, I think, 280 feet. So from Kansas, so starting here at Kansas down to about this utility box. We are widening this sidewalk space. So to add the bike path in here. So it'll be raised at the sidewalk level. So this sidewalk will push over towards the buildings, maintain that 5-foot pathway, and then the raised bike lane will be, I think it's 8 feet. No trees will be lost in this, according to the design right now. No trees in this area are going to be lost. So we'll keep an eye on those. Our public landscape team came out to look at these, and we have some workarounds so that we don't damage them. But, you know, any new treatment, we'll just keep an eye on them to make sure they stay healthy. On this stretch, yeah, and that happens up here by the start of the tunnel around here. No, that will stay. Mm-hmm. Right. Sometimes we do, you know, but this one, I think, yeah, thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any other questions for Jackie and Kyle?
Yes, I have a question.
Bernice.
I noticed on, I guess, Colorado Broadway, there is no left turn. What is the reason no left turn?
On Colorado.
Onto Yale, you mean?
Going north, yeah, when you coming west to east, there is no left turn.
On Colorado?
I think it's Colorado and Broadway, but it's
the
Colorado and Broadway are parallel, so.
No, I think you're talking about the turn restriction of no left turn turning onto Yale from Colorado. Yeah.
They're talking about here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not only on Yale, it's on many streets, but what is the reason there's no left turn?
So typically these are implemented, like in this case, it's today, the way it exists is during the peak hour. So the busiest time of rush hour, these turns are restricted a lot of times because of the amount of cars coming down makes it hard for these turning vehicles to get a gap in traffic and make that turn. Meanwhile, this space has such a short storage, has such storage for the cars that come in here to the turn pocket to make their left. So then they back up and get spill over into the intersection. So to eliminate that choke point, these restrictions are put in place, and then to eliminate the conflicts that happen, right? Because then it's a higher risk decision that people are making. There's more things, more conflicts and decision making that they have to make really fast in the middle of pedestrians crossing, bicyclists trying to get in here and make their connection over here, these people making left or potentially right to also come in the turn pocket. So it's a way to reduce the amount of conflicts at a very complicated intersection that has a lot of demand for different modes.
Maybe the solution could be to put more traffic lights, so then, you know, the traffic is controlled.
But we would still have a lot of problems with, you know, we typically don't install signals this close together. So we already have one here. To install one here, it still wouldn't resolve that issue of the the congestion in this small space. So it might allow people to make that turn easier because they would get a protected green, but it's still very little storage that only 2 cars could get in here to make that turn. Meanwhile, you know, when we put those restrictions in, at least cars could flow through and get out of this congestion and go up to the next block to turn.
Okay. So,
Okay.
you know, in the downtown area, there's traffic light in every street for many years. And now the traffic is increasing in that area because of a lot of people working all over there. So maybe there needs to be consideration of having traffic lights very close, you know, almost in every street.
Well, I think part of the goal with the transportation projects is to give people more options to get around and not just be in their car driving, right? So give people better options for biking, safe pathways for walking, right? To be more what we call active modes, because we know that traffic isn't going to get better, right? So we're trying to find solutions for people who don't want to be driving and give room to them in the street so that everyone can have a choice to get around, as opposed to just being sort of reduced to just driving.
I know, but the behavior is not changing because there are way too many cars.
Yeah, it does take a long time, but I think, you know, the better high quality infrastructure that we can get in to our streets, it forces people to change behavior, and that's part of the engineering of what we call Vision Zero, eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries, is redesigning our streets to force better behavior.
Thank you.
Okay. It looks like is it Caro has a hand up?
Yeah,
You're on.
yeah, I was great, thanks. First, thank you for doing this. This is super exciting. I'm excited to feel safer riding my bike and walking around there. And then it looks like there's more to it than I realized. I'm even more excited. One question I was going to ask, I think you said there's going to be a bike signal on Olympic and Stewart. I was wondering how that's going to work. Is that going to be timed with the walk signal or something like that?
No, I think it's going to go on its own phase, but you know, the bicyclists can also, well, actually, if there's a bike signal, maybe Kyle knows, when there's a bike signal, bicyclists can't go with the ped signal.
Yeah, it's tricky because the state law changed. So now the state law is that bicyclists can go at the same time pedestrians can go. But I think the difference is unless there is a bike signal ahead with a dedicated bike phase, then the bicyclist is not supposed to go when the pedestrians go. I don't know if they're not allowed to. I don't know. I can't remember exactly the law, but they're supposed to go with their separated bike signal phase.
With their own dedicated light. Yeah. So
Yeah.
similar to like where we had the scrambles on Colorado and the bike signal, you know, a lot of bicyclists might go with the peds during those scrambles, but because there's a bike signal there, technically they're supposed to go with the bike signal.
But they did just change the law, so it's a little
Right.
bit more
So it's a little
confusing
unclear.
now.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm looking at hands up. Barbara, since we have 2 people, you know, from the mobility department, do you want to raise the issue of where you live on Michigan?
Well, I think I've been speaking with some of them already. Kyle, for
Okay.
example, is pretty familiar, and he's been attending some meetings with the task force that is working on the Santa Monica High School mobility choices. And so he's quite familiar with the project. I haven't talked to Jackie about it, but you know, I look forward to a lot more interaction with Kyle.
Yeah, and I told Barbara, you know, after our last meeting, when we discussed it at the East Pico safety study meeting, you know, I followed up with Jason and he, you know, and then since then, I think I don't think you were in the fall. We had a follow-up meeting with Mario and
Yeah,
the folks
and
that did the
Kent.
walk.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, you know, I think they're planning maybe another meeting. So
Yeah, March 21 or 28. Yeah.
Yeah, so, so we'll be there in attendance and can continue that conversation.
Yeah, that's another very complicated traffic situation. So I'm so happy it's rolling along.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the chat. Gina's posting, this is an issue the Pico Neighborhood Association has advocated for quite some time, about local hire for city and school positions, which would, reduce the commuters coming into our city, every day. I mean, that's much of the traffic congestion is not residents. It's the workforce coming in and out of Santa Monica every day. So this is just maybe something to pass on to the higher ups there in the transportation planning. Is it division or department? It's something we support across the board of the city, having incentives or some sort of plan to try to, when possible, hire local residents, right? I'm just curious, Jackie, do you live in Santa Monica?
Sadly, no.
Do you, Kyle?
I used to. I wish. I
Oh.
wish I still did.
Yeah,
I
and
can't
that's
afford it.
not. I know, and we all are aware of the lack of affordable housing. So, okay. Any other questions? That was a very informative presentation.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone for your time. Really appreciate you guys sitting through it. And any comments or future questions, feel free to send me an email.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you both. That was great.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Yeah, you too.